I've got the Create This book, so how's about we create some art? We could do a little bit of painting. Oh, and we could use a glass dip pen with ink. I hope you've got a drink with you too. This is gonna be a lot of fun. Let's switch on all of these lights because it's winter now and it's super grey. I'm excited. We're creating super different art, especially from the last few pages with the bubble art and the Santa emojis in marker. But today the prompt is create your survival kit. Draw items that you need to survive alone. I filled up a pot of water because today we're using watercolor paint, which you might not be surprised about. It is my favorite medium. The palette is looking messy. We need to grab a paintbrush. And this is the sketch. Can you tell what we're going to be painting today? It's a face, a portrait, in a very loose, messy style. Very similar to the style I did for that huge Secret Santa collab that I did with 18 other artists. If you haven't checked that out, I highly recommend that you do. It was such an amazing project, and I'll leave the playlist down below. A bunch of artists from all around the world took part in a crazy art swap, and I created a cute little witch in a similar style to this that I shipped off to Australia. So I think it's about time that we make another similar portrait. This time the color palette is kind of crazy. I was actually intending to use pink, and as you can see, we're not using pink. The last page we completed is purple and yellow, so that kind of eliminated pink. We're filling the Create This book in order, so we need to create a page that will contrast the last one. And since blue wasn't really in the last two pieces much, that's what we're going for. Though I will say this page didn't quite go to plan. You can see already that we're just making a big mess, and it's kind of difficult to control. I'm adding water to create blooms, and of course, if this is going to be a messy piece, we need to add splatters. Splatters are honestly my favorite thing, but unfortunately they do end up on the wall, and we need to use a hairdryer if we're gonna speed things up. But with that, I think the first layer is all done, but I don't know how this is going. It's all kind of blended together, which is understandable because it's 100% cotton paper, but I think this needs a lot more definition. Mixing in some indigo to create some crazy dark shadows. And this is a little bit chaotic, it does look chaotic, but if you're ever creating a piece of art and feel like it doesn't have very much contrast, usually this is the next step. Deepen those shadows and it will all come together. Well, maybe. I've got the smaller brush and we're creating even darker shadows now, hoping that this might just fix the piece. I don't know, there's something that isn't working here. There isn't much definition, but I think the biggest reason is this angle. I can never draw faces well when they're looking at the side. Like, tell me this eye doesn't look completely off. I'm trying to make it work, I'm trying to deepen those shadows, but something just isn't looking right here. Still, we're gonna keep going and hope that this piece will come together somehow. And if you haven't guessed already, for this prompt, there is only one thing that I need to survive, and that is lip balm. More specifically, a tub of Vaseline, but I thought that would look a little bit odd in this painting, so I've gone for a stereotypical lip balm instead of a mysterious pot. I don't know why and how it happened, but my lips are so dry that I need it every single time I eat and drink something. Otherwise, they become so dry that it's literally painful. So that's the one thing that I really need. If we're taking food and drink out of the equation in this survival matter, like obviously we need those, but since this is an art prompt book, I'm guessing that they're already included. And also, if I'm ever given the opportunity, I'm going to just paint a portrait. Any excuse to whip out the watercolors, make a mess, and just have fun. And if I can create splatters, then that's even better. And plus, there isn't actually a portrait in this book yet. And speaking of, you can see that this eye has gone horrifically wrong. I kept trying to fix it and it just kept getting bigger and bigger to the point where, like, look at this eye. Can you see how big it is? Still, I'm delusional, so we're just adding more and more shadows and hoping it will just disappear. here. Though I'm not really sure that it needs more shadows at this point. And I'm desperately trying to pick up some of that paint with a clean brush with some kitchen roll. And realizing now that blue is the most staining color and that doesn't happen. Let's see if we can fix this with color pencils. I have no faith. I have never used color pencils in a situation like this. Adding them to a loose portrait, never done that before. But I'm going in with the lightest shades to try and add some of those highlights back. So I'm trying to make the iris look a little bit smaller and make it lighter and try to define some of those eyebrow and eyelash hairs because they got completely lost. Still, it's time for the guillotine. The worst part. This painting is not what I planned. It's gone in a different direction, but I think this is it. I have to make sure I cut it correctly though, because as I'm sure you can tell, it's very close to the edge. And unfortunately, that cut means that the tip of the nose is on the other side. This is gonna look so strange in the book. Oh no. But at least we didn't lose any of the head. That was the main goal here. So I'm sticking in that right side, which does fit pretty perfectly, though this always scares me. And now going into the left side, we actually need to cut out a little window for the prompt to shine through. Honestly, something goes wrong in every single Create This Book video we make. And whilst it isn't what I planned, I think the portrait is still looking pretty good. But I want to keep the offcuts. I want to keep that little window, so I'm sticking it in the Daily Doodle Diary, which also means I get to remember the day that I filmed this on. And that huge sketchbook tour will be coming next week. Make sure you're subscribed for that. I've waited a whole year. But now we're moving on to the second prompt. Create a comic page. Create a comic based on part of your day. And this is the chaotic sketch I've already made. We're grabbing the India ink and I'm reaching for this glass dip pen. Look how gorgeous it is. Plus we need some transfer sheets. And can you believe how grey it is outside? It's the middle of the day. Why is it so grey? We're creating a traditional style comic using just black. This isn't diluted in the slightest. And I'm hoping it's going to make a bold, dramatic comic. But let me tell you, I am scared. I have never made a comic before in my life, and I've not looked at a comic book in years. This is one of those prompts that if I wasn't filling this book in order, I would avoid this one. And part of the reason that I am filling this Create This Book in order is to avoid that. It's to challenge myself to create art for every single prompt, even though it sounds difficult. There is no way that I would race to create a comic in any other instance. So, what are we making? Well, this is a person, kind of, starting off by grabbing all of the hair and popping it in a bun before completing the rest of my nightly routine. And I actually got this idea from my friend, Art with Ashley Monet. It's been a long while since I watched her video, but I believe she made a comic page on a simple mundane task. I think it was all about the correct way to wash your hair. I think. It's been a while since I watched it, but this gave me the inspiration to create a comic based on my nightly routine. And it's not something I look forward to. Honestly, in the evening, I find it so difficult to get up and go to the bathroom, especially in the winter when it's freezing cold. So, putting my hair up in a bun, then I put on all of the fluffy gear, some cozy pajamas, which you can now see me drawing, attempting to. I guess just ignore the arms and legs and try and pretend like I actually know how to draw people. Inking is a very different story. And I'm having a lot of problems with this page right now because this pen was just not working and I couldn't figure out why until I realized the very tip of this glass dip pen has a slight crack. Like, can you see that? That's why it's not working. So we're reaching for the trusty old dip pen. I say trusty like I have any experience with these. I really don't. I've not used them since I did Inktober October. What, like 2-3 years ago now? But this one is working. With the glass dip pen, I was just dipping it in and filling the entire thing with ink and then putting it on the page and nothing was coming out. That's why I was so confused the entire way through. But with the traditional pen, I'm popping it in and the ink is coming out. And now I'm finding my flow. But those first 15 minutes were awful. They were tragic. And I could not figure out why it wasn't working. I had to Google it. And Google said that if the glass dip pen is a little bit broken at the end, then the ink won't come out. And that's when I noticed the tiniest little crack. That must have been it. It's very sad though. But now we're making some real progress. After popping my hair in a bun and putting on cozy pajamas and fluffy socks, I then head to the bathroom and brush my teeth with a little whoosh of the tap. You can just see the whoosh in the corner there. And then I wash my face. In the summer, this is kind of relaxing, but in the winter, this is awful because the water is ice cold. I live in a 100-year-old cottage in the UK, so as I'm sure you can imagine, in the bathroom, the cold and hot tap are separate. So when I wash my face, I have to decide if I would like scorching hot or freezing cold. And I've heard that that's not a common thing in the United States, but the taps are separate. And that's why I hate washing my face in the winter or using the taps in general because they're so cold. But after I force myself to go and wash my face, I then lie down in bed and sit on my phone for a little while. I know that technically this isn't the correct thing to do because apparently the screen will kind of wake you up. But honestly, this is the only way that I can become sleepy. Because I have no imagination, reading a book is kind of out of the question. Like nothing happens in my head. So instead, I go on my phone before finally switching off the light. Oh, and here's another fun fact of living in an old house. There are spotlights on top of the bed, and there's actually 2 ways to switch them on and off. There's the standard switch that I've drawn on this page. There's actually a string light right next to the bed. Now, this is something that the flat I used to live in also had, but I did a quick Google search the other day, and apparently that's not very common. So yeah, above my head, there's just a random string light. And I mean, I actually really like it because then you can walk in the room and switch the light on at the door, but then switch it off when you're in bed. But apparently that's not a common thing. I don't know, let me know if you've ever heard of that. I think it's so interesting seeing all the differences between different countries too. But obviously this is a very old house, so I don't know how much of it is just because of that. And if you want to see an empty house tour of this 100-year-old cottage, that is in the moving series playlist that I've popped down below, and it's tiny. You won't believe how small it is. Whilst this page does have a lot of interesting components, it really seems to be missing details. One thing that comic books do have is lots of areas filled in, and don't get me wrong, I love screen tones. The little dots that you can stick down on the page, I think they look incredible. But since I don't have any because they're super expensive, we're filling in lots of areas black. And you know what? I do think that this works. I think it makes it stand out from the page. We're going with the flow. We're having fun, trying not to damage the paper too much, which the glass dip pen definitely did. That was also how I noticed that it wasn't working because it almost made a hole in the page. I was pressing down to try and figure out why it just wasn't coming out, and it was kind of pulling apart the page. So I guess that's probably because it was a little bit sharp from breaking. This one is working a lot better, and you know what? For a first attempt at a comic, I don't think this is too bad. I tried to get some of the text elements in and make it a little bit wonky and try and make my nightly routine as interesting as I possibly could. And hopefully seeing it laid out like this is gonna make me a little bit less reluctant to go and do it every single night. All that's left is to rub out the pencil lines underneath. And now the next 2 prompts are complete. Let's have a look at them. First up was create a survival kit, a loose, messy watercolor portrait. I kind of created my first ever comic. These are both so different and I'm loving the direction that we're taking to create this book. Subscribe for more. I've already filmed the next 3. Hopefully I'll see you then. Bye bye.